coming up with a design that you've all given us the input, and we're going to walk you a little bit through some of how we arrived at what we've done. So today we're going to review the input that we heard from the last meeting, so you can hear the overall themes and things that we came up with. We're going to go over the site observations and the SPU constraints one more time, so everybody understands what we're dealing with there. We'll go into the preferred schematic design, and then lastly, Patrick will get up and talk a little bit about the concepts for the art. So a summary of what we learned from the last meeting. That we presented three schemes, Waves, Vista, and Commons, if you recall the names. And of those, the Waves and Vista schemes were preferred. So I think that might be pretty common knowledge for everybody that was here and saw what was happening. The comments about those overall included that Waves was, it had a nice organic feel, felt like it more fit the neighborhood. There was a nice separation of uses and some of the programming that was taking place. Vista was embraced because of its ability to emphasize the geographic uniqueness of the neighborhood being the second highest point and taking advantage of all those viewpoints and vistas and opportunities that we could take advantage, accentuate views, that type of thing. Commons. Commons, as you recall, was the one where we projected the city grid across, and the first comment, the most powerful, was it was too rigid. It felt like it was just too programmed, and the powerful or the good side of it was that there were a lot of optional elements, because that was one where we kind of switched things around and put athletic fields in different places and showed a few different amenities. One of those things was something like multi-use courts. It was one of the only ones that had a hard surface type court, something like that. So that was a summary of the three. A visual reminder, so hopefully you recall the three. Waves, very organic, kind of working a lot with the existing site, a lot of the patterns and things that were there. Vista, it was all about views. Everything was oriented to being in the park and having a view either in the park, out of the park, or across the park. And then Commons, there's the grid, kind of switching it up and getting all the real hard lines of the city projected through it. Interesting thing, there were good merits to all these, so we'll be able to see some of that come through, I think, as we move forward. This is a summary of the input. These are kind of the overall themes that were arrived at. There was a desire to have the central open space. View terraces and view variety, so making sure there were lots of opportunities to take advantage of that strength of the park and the neighborhood. Lots of gathering spaces, lots of different sizes of gathering spaces for varying groups and uses. An emphasis on kids' play, making sure that we really thought about the children's area and what was happening there. Multi-generational features. It's a park for everybody, so we want to make sure we have elements that include everybody. Walkways and loop paths, perimeter walkways, that was something that everybody really felt strong about, being able to get to the park and circulate within the park, so being able to take advantage of that. The art, the existing art, we have the mural panels and the gazebo, the trellis structure, and then of course the new art that's coming on with Patrick, so there was a desire to make sure that was included. Maple leaf identity. That was a little tougher for us because we keep searching and asking what that is, but the idea of bringing the character of the neighborhood in and the inclusion of certain elements that we see as a common theme around the neighborhood and bringing those in. Also the existing trees and plantings, so the trees on the slope and the trees on the Roosevelt edge, those existing trees, and even some of the trees down on 82nd, so respecting those and thinking about those in the design. Water was definitely an element that people would desire to see. And safety. A few of the comments included things that people felt they saw things that might not be safe in the design, so definitely using safety as an overlay in our thinking. We have this list at the bottom that were heavily debated items, and these are things that there wasn't a consensus to one way or the other of whether it should be in or shouldn't be in. On that list was this idea of baseball, athletic fields, multi-use, primarily I think because we showed it between the south area and the lit area, And I think that's what people were debating heavily. I think that the support for the baseball fields is there, but that kind of debate of where should those elements end up. The off-leash area, definitely heavily debated, kind of 50-50 on where we end up with that one, as with the skate park. A lot of people in favor of it, and the person sitting right next to him might say, no thank you. So those are, that's generally a summary of the big themes that we picked up from meeting number 3. So a review. If you've been to all the other meetings, this is going to be pretty familiar to you. There's a couple new pieces of information to share because every time we meet with SPU, we learn something new about what we can and can't do. The lid, when the concrete lid is done, there's going to be a 24-inch cover over that, maximum, flat. That's what it's going to look like. The weight limits, there are weight limits on what can take place out here, so of course things like structures and elements like that are going to cause issues, so we have to take that into consideration. Uniform weight distribution. This is the one that kind of threw us. I want to say we were misled or we misunderstood. We started to think about if we did something uniformly across, that we would be meeting the spirit of it. Well, what it really means is, go back to item number 1. You have 24 inches of cover, and as long as you have a uniform 24 inches of cover, that's uniform weight distribution. It didn't mean you could start adding things here and there as long as you added them everywhere. So there was a little bit of confusion about, can we put trees on the lid? Can we do certain things to add that life to this big open space on the lid? In our opinion, no. There's a comment out there about we can use planters, and we don't see the advantage to putting more cost into putting in additional elements to grow plants in when, go back to number 1, you can only have 24 inches of cover. So we're kind of using the information we have to say that this is going to be a fairly plainer area, which we're going to try to infuse some life in with a couple of our themes. So.
Can you not use 12 inches of cover and make it up for it with other things and still have a uniform weight?
Well, the question is can you just use 12 inches of cover and make up for it? How do I explain? The first 12 inches is taken up by SPU's drainage and what they have to do to protect the lid with insulation, drainage, and everything they're doing. On top of that, then there's about 12 inches that is actually soil for growing things in. So when you start to mess with those layers, you see that, okay, you get down to these layers, and what can you do with it? One of the things that we discovered in our conversations with SPU is that what seems to be no problem with them is paving and synthetic. Those would be things that they embrace. Things you grow and things you do otherwise, a little bit of question, a little bit of issue. We have to kind of work through that with the type of things that we're going to grow on it. So a little bit of what we've learned since last time. Access to the hatches and points, those are the 2 that are going to be located up here on the north side, and then there's one large one here. And then as we said, if we didn't do anything, SPU is going to put in all this gray line, which is asphalt roadways, driveways, that they have to be able to get to those points. So, the no pesticide herbicides within 50 feet of the lid. So this black dash line is actually the lid, the buried reservoir. And so 50 feet outside of that is our no pesticide, no herbicide zone without approval of SPU. So we have some constraints there we have to consider on the kinds of materials and things that we use there.